The following program is presented by the Metropolitan Library Service Agency.
Hello, welcome to All About Kids, a program focusing on the interests of children and young people and some of the issues affecting them. Today's guests are among the foremost experts in children's literature in the Twin City area. Katie Weiblen and Lois Ringquist are children's services librarians with the Minneapolis Public Library. They're here to talk about children's books too good to miss. You won't want to miss the titles, so have a paper and pencil handy as they talk about their choices.
Hello. This is Katie Weiblen. I'm Lois Ringquist, both from the Minneapolis Public Library. We're delighted to be here today to talk with you about some recent children's books we feel simply too good to be missed. Children, from tots to teens, are avid consumers of books and other communications media. Whether what they consume enriches them or simply passes the time depends to a large extent on the adults who produce, select, and introduce those materials, making them available to children. Last year, there were more than 4,000 children's books published and distributed in the United States. Singling out a few dozen wasn't easy, was it?
Not at all.
Most of the books we'll discuss are recent acquisitions of the Minneapolis Public Library. Since new titles arrive daily, a list done a month from now might be rather different, don't you think?
True.
The books we've chosen to share with you were selected to expand the horizons of children's visual, emotional, and social lives. Some will instruct, some will reassure, some will entertain. All, introduced by knowledgeable adults, will expand the child's experiences and stimulate imagination, making his worlds better places to be. Katie, would you start for us?
Yes, I'd like to begin by telling you about some recent books which have won literary prizes for either artistic or literary merit. Every year, publishers, librarians, teachers, children, adults look forward to the books which will receive prizes for their outstanding achievements. The first one I have is Charlie Skedaddle by Patricia Beatty. It is the winner of the 1987 Skedaddle Award for Historical Fiction. And Patricia Beatty, who is an author of many outstanding historical novels.
I was delighted when she won the award because she has done so many good historical things,
And
especially
now,
about the Civil War and the late 1800s.
and this gives her real national recognition for her story about the Bowery boy who runs away from New York to join the Union Army to avenge his brother's death at Gettysburg. Charlie becomes a drummer boy, and a very good one at that, until during the Battle of the Wilderness, he kills a soldier. And in his horror at the sight of the dead man at his own hand, he runs away, and thus earns the name Charlie Skedaddle from the other soldiers. Patricia Beatty shows us that courageous acts are often done without an audience and for selfless reasons. An outstanding historical novel for children grades 5 and 6. If You Didn't Have Me by Ulf Nilsson won the Mildred Batchelder Award for Outstanding Fiction published originally in another language. In this case, this book was published in Swedish, and it is the story of two brothers who are taken care of by their grandparents while their parents are building a new home in the city. It is a charming story written in the chapter book form, a term which we often use as librarians to signify a book which contains stories in episodes contained in each chapter. Excellent book for reading aloud. It is both touching and humorous and would be enjoyed by children 8, 9, 10 years old. If You Didn't Have Me, the Mildred Batchelder Award winner for this year. Then a new award given in Minnesota for the very first time last fall during the Minnesota Festival of the Book. There were 2 awards given for outstanding fiction in Minnesota. The first, or one of them rather, being given for the best fiction for younger readers. And that was given to Barbara Juster Esbenson of Edina for her book, The Star Maiden. It is a beautiful folk tale of Native American origin that tells the story of how the Star Maiden tires of living in heaven and longs to return to earth. You will notice that each page has an intricate border design. This is an outstanding Native American folk tale by a local author. Gary Paulson won the award for the outstanding fiction title for older readers. We would gauge that this would be enjoyed by children grades 5 and up. It is the story of a 12-year-old boy who survives an airplane crash in the Canadian wilderness and is left to survive in the wilderness for 54 days with only a hatchet for survival, thus the title Hatchet. Gary Paulson also won a Newbery Honor Book Award for this title last year.
It's not his first. We have
He's won others.
An award with which you may not be familiar is the USBBY Award, United States Board of Books for Young People. The award was given to Canadian illustrator Barbara Reed for her unusual plasticine, colorful relief illustrations of birds in varying seasons and habitats. The medium gives particular depth and texture to the pages. If you can see the birds. And
it almost has a three-dimensional effect.
You can see the splashes as the duck goes under. And the design is also intriguing. For example, the very indignant cat's tail exiting when he hasn't managed to catch any of the birds. It's a winner for children ages 3 and up. The most prestigious awards given to children's books in the United States are 2. One for text, the Newbery Award, one for illustration, the Caldecott. Russell Friedman's talent for putting exactly the right details in uncomplicated prose won him the 1988 Newbery Award for Lincoln, a photobiography. Well-chosen, carefully captioned photos and prints expand the text. Not just the best children's biography of Lincoln. This is the epitome of what a children's biography should be. It's interesting, accessible, good for a 10-year-old. I enjoyed it, and so did my college-age son with whom I shared it.
And wouldn't you say that some of the photos of Lincoln in this book
Yes.
are photos that you may have never seen anywhere else of Abraham Lincoln?
You can see how the presidency wore on him using photos over the years.
It really is an outstanding book.
Unique among poetry books is the 1989 Paul Fleischman Award winner, Newbery Award winner, Joyful Noise, 14 poems about the lives and dreams of insects. Vivid language, strong images, and the masterful use of 2 voices in musical duet make this an excellent choice for reading aloud. You want to try it?
Let's read Book Lice.
Okay, that's a good one for us. Well, if we can find it, that is.
There it is. Book Lice. I was born in a fine old edition of Schiller.
While I started life in a private eye thriller. We're book lice who dwell in these dusty bookshelves.
Later I lodged in Scott's Works, volume 50.
While I passed my youth in an Agatha Christie. We're book lice attached despite contrasting pasts.
One day, while in search of a new place to eat,
he fell down 7 shelves where we happened to meet. We're book lice who chew on the bookbinding glue.
We honeymooned in an old guidebook on Greece.
I missed Conan Doyle. He pined for his Keats. We're book lice, fine mates, despite different tastes.
So we set up our home inside Roget's Thesaurus.
Not far from my mysteries, close to his Horace. We're book lice, adoring, despite his loud snoring.
And there we've resided, and there we'll remain.
He nearby his Shakespeare, I near my Spillane. We're book-loving book lice, plain proof of the fact,
which I'm certain I read in a book some months back,
that opposites often are known to attract.
Great humorous poetry, may be enjoyed on many levels.
You have a son who knows something about insects and poetry, right?
Yes, and he was studying insect life in the Rockies last summer when I sent him this book, just because I thought he would find it so funny. And then I was especially pleased to learn it had won the Newbery Award, unusual for poetry.
Off the top of my head, I would say it's only the second book of poetry that has won.
What was the first?
The other one that I remember is A Visit to William Blake's Inn.
Oh, yes.
A number of years ago. We said there were 2 prestigious awards. The second is given for illustration. That's the Caldecott. Owl Moon by Jane Yolen, illustrated by John Schoenherr, is the 1988 Caldecott Award winner. It's an exquisite mood piece of a father and child who venture forth on a winter night to commune with owls. The poetic narrative and powerful watercolor illustrations are perfectly matched. We thought it might be too quiet for story hour. Wrong. Children ages 3 through 7 were enthralled. Twin Cities Citian Stephen Gammell won the 1989 Caldecott Award for his illustration of Karen Ackerman's story of a lovable grandfather recreating his past for his 3 grandchildren. In Song and Dance Man, the warm illustrations are such fun. They draw the reader in and make him part of the audience.
I think what makes this Caldecott winner so special is that it has never ever been awarded to someone from the Midwest or someone from Minnesota. So we feel especially proud of Stephen Gammell.
He has had 2 honor books before for that wonderful expression, can I say, of family unity and reunion in The Relatives Came, and also for Where the Buffalo Begin.
The Native American story, right.
Katie, do you have some picture books you're going to show us?
I have brought some outstanding picture books, just a few of many. The first one I brought is Annabelle Swift, Kindergartner. This is by the author Amy Schwartz. She is the author of Bee and Mr. Jones. This is a humorous picture book about a girl entering kindergarten and being given advice by her older sister, who tells her, be sure to ask a lot of questions. Teachers like that.
Oh, yes.
But not all the advice is successful. But in the end, Annabelle Swift does learn to count all the milk money on the first day and become milk monitor. The loyalty between her big sister and herself will remind you of Beverly Cleary's Beezus and Ramona. It's George by Miriam Cohen is a story about a first grader. George is the first grader that you'll probably meet in every classroom. He is the child who is told by his classmates, George, you can't get smart. You either are or you aren't. Well, George has other strengths. He's the only child who can feed the animals successfully. And then there's the time when he saves an elderly friend by dialing 911. Lillian Hoban's illustrations capture the multi-ethnic first graders in all their activities and interactions. Here is a book for beginning readers. It is part of the Henry and Mudge series, again written by Cynthia Ryland, whom Lois mentioned earlier. Henry and Mudge Under the Yellow Moon and Henry and Mudge in the Sparkle Days tell the story of a boy and his dog and a very warm and endearing friendship between them. This one that I brought is the fall story, Henry and Mudge Under the Yellow Moon, and the Sparkle Days takes place during the winter.
My favorite one is Henry and Mudge in Puddle Trouble, which is the spring one.
Oh, I think she's written at least 4 or maybe 5. Mm-hmm. We also have Fox's Dream by Tehima. This is a beautiful picture book with illustrations in woodcut by the author-illustrator of Owl Lake, not to be confused with Owl Moon. They are 2 separate titles. This tells the story of a lonely fox who wanders through a winter forest looking for an enchanting vision, which eventually will lead him to the companionship which he desires. Silent as his shadow, the fox races through the night.
It's beautiful, illustrated.
This is a beautiful story of the natural world and the human spirit, and it can be enjoyed by children and adults on many different levels. Shaker Lane by Alice and Martin Pravonsen. Do not be misled by this title. It is not a book about the Shakers. Instead, it is a book about a rural neighborhood and the changes which take place in it. Actually, it turns out to be upstate New York, which is where the Pravonsens make their home. It reminded me of Virginia Lee Burton's The Little House and Peter Spear's Tin Lizzie. And like those old favorites, will leave the reader with a twinge of nostalgia for what used to be. My last picture book is The Boy of the 3-Year Nap, which has the distinction of being one of this year's Caldecott Honor books. It begins like this: on the banks of the river Nagara, where the long-necked cormorants fish at night, there once lived a poor widow and her son. This engaging tale about the laziest boy in the Japanese village is a perfect read-aloud compliment to any young person interested in Japan. How the mother cleverly maneuvers events to change the habits of her lazy son is humorous and satisfying. The illustrations, in brush line and vibrant color, are reminiscent of the master Japanese painters.
I have some picture books too, but they have a little different slant. That is, they're all books by Minnesotans. This one, Why the Crab Has No Head, has Minneapolis and Barbara Knutson drawing on her own African experiences for both the illustrations and the text of this pourquoi tale from Zaire. The jacket is somewhat misleading. The interior illustrations are all black and white. The rhythm, diction, and humor make this an excellent read-aloud choice. See if I can show you. It was Nzambi Mapungu who made the earth and the sky. And after that, my children, she made the guinea fowl and the crocodile, the turtle and the gazelle. She made the leopard and the lizard. And still, she was not finished. She took 1 whole day to make the elephant, and that was heavy work.
There's something different about that one.
Mm-hmm. Did you notice the gender of the creator?
Female.
Mm-hmm. And my favorite time of the year, by another Minneapolis author, Susan Pearson, follows young Kelly, her parents, and her baby brother from the joys of autumn's changing leaves and jack-o'-lanterns through winter's snowmen and sledding to the crocuses and snowsuitless freedom of spring and the barbecues and beaches of summer. Each, Kelly avers, is her very favorite time of year. Warm, imaginative, but not saccharine. It's filled with a true appreciation of the rhythm of the seasons. For preschoolers and up through grade 3. For slightly older than the picture book age is this book by Jane Resch Thomas, Saying Goodbye to Grandma. Jane's name is familiar to us here in Minneapolis because of her book reviewing in the Star Tribune. And this book, Saying Goodbye to Grandma, is a notable children's book this year. Susie's experiencing the rituals associated with death will be enlightening for children ages 7 through 9, but a gentle warning: it may be tear-inducing for the adults sharing the story. Realistic sentiment without sentimentality. Airmail to the Moon by Tom Birdseye. Ora May, better known as Oreo because she's such a sweet cookie, is popcorn in the pan excited because her first tooth's come out and she has big plans for her tooth fairy money. The tooth disappears. Oreo vociferously goes a-hunting, vowing to send that thief airmail to the moon, only to be as embarrassed as a zebra without stripes when she discovers the tooth's in the bottom of her pants pocket. Award-winning Stephen Gamble has provided a riotous image of a spunky, motor-mouthed heroine stomping around in overalls and striped socks. Not a Minnesotan, but nearby in South Dakota, Paul Goebel lives, the author and illustrator of Iktomi and the Boulder. In a delightful change of pace, the Caldecott medalist tells, for 5 through 9-year-olds, a comic tale of Iktomi, the Plains Indian trickster. Tired of carrying his blanket, Iktomi gives it to the boulder, but when rain threatens, he retrieves it. Angry, the boulder chases Iktomi down and holds him captive until he tricks bats into chipping the boulder to pieces with their heads, which of course explains why bats have flat faces and why there are little rocks all over the Great Plains. Goebel provides dialogue and asides for the storyteller, and Iktomi's thoughts for the individual reader.
Well, following that Native American folktale, I would like to tell a little bit about some folktales that have come in recent months. The first book I have is Jump Again, The Adventures of Brer Rabbit by Joel Chandler Harris. It begins like this: You hear folks say Brer Rabbit is full of tricks, but what some folks call tricks is just plain animal sense. He was born little, and the littler creatures are, the more sense they got to have. Jump Again is a companion volume to Parks's Jump, and it represents 5 more of the Brer Rabbit stories, emphasizing the trickster's cleverness. This is a must-have for anyone interested in Afro-American folklore, and another new version of Uncle Remus Tales, which we don't have with us, but which is More Tales of Uncle Remus by Jules Lester. Both of these volumes are interesting in that they do not have the dialect, so that everyone may feel comfortable in reading them aloud. There are 2 new outstanding editions of Goldilocks and the 3 Bears, and I'd like to tell you about them by way of comparison, first of all.
It's good because so often there are folk tales that come up and they're illustrated over and over again, and when one goes to buy or even select one at the library, one doesn't know which is best.
You hardly know from the many different versions where to begin. So this one I chose for its outstanding beauty and illustration. Goldilocks and the 3 Bears, retold and illustrated by Jan Brett. This is a just gorgeous picture book of the 3 Bears story. You will notice that Jan Brett has used borders to enhance particular aspects of the story. This one will be remembered for its bear motifs. The illustrator has used bear beds, bear doors, bear porridge bowls. The other version, which we have with us today, is Goldilocks and the 3 Bears by James Marshall. And while the other will be remembered for illustration, this one will be remembered for its humor, because James Marshall has concluded what many of us have known all along, and that is that Goldilocks is really a nervy little kid.
The illustrations for that also won him a Caldecott honor.
That's right, this year. This is one of the Caldecott Honor Award books. My last collection of folk tales is British Folk Tales New Versions by Kevin Crossley, Holland. This is the first comprehensive retelling of the great body of British folk tales in many years. The language is memorable. Listen to the beginning of this story, The Sea Woman. It was an empty oyster and pearl afternoon. The water lapped at the sand and sorted the shingle and lapped around the rock where the girl was sitting. Then she saw a seal, like a mass of seaweed almost, until she gazed into those eyes. British Folk Tales. It has been a pleasure to be with you today, to share with you some of these books which are too good to miss, and which are available for all of you at your nearest public library, which we hope that you'll visit very soon. Thank you for joining us on All About Kids.
Some great choices for the young readers we're all working with. Thanks to Katie and Lois for joining us on All About Kids, and thank you. Please tune in again.
This has been a presentation of Hennepin County Library in conjunction with the Twin Cities Metropolitan Library Service Agency. We thank you for watching, and we hope you visit your public library often.